Welcome into the OBR streaming network. This is the post-game show following a Browns loss at the hands of the Bengals, 21-14, as they return home from three consecutive road games. Return home to lose to the Bengals. There's much to discuss today, as Deshaun Watson suffered what appears to be a very serious injury. But first, let's introduce the man next to me. His name is Pete Smith. He's always fantastic. You can follow him on Twitter at _Pete Smith _. How we doing today, Pete?
It's been a long day, but we'll get through it.
Yeah. Let's start right there, I guess. No other place really to start is Watson was leading the team on a drive into where were they at in the field? They were on the 30, 40-yard line, I think. As they were, it was his best drive of the day to that point. He had made a couple plays off schedule, getting out of the pocket. A design run is called, and his I only can assume is his Achilles is it was pretty gross, is done, right? Or he will have to have surgery to have it repaired. That's assuming, that's what we saw there. You wrote about this a little bit. What are your thoughts on this, and what's next as far as how the Browns handle this with him?
It's either torn or ruptured. His season is over, and his career is almost certainly over. It was awful to watch. You obviously he hadn't been playing well, but it was unpleasant to see it happen, and obviously he's devastated. It's the most human I think I've ever seen Deshaun Watson look since he's been in Cleveland. A guy who's tried to put up a tough front and not be vulnerable as much as possible. And as I've talked about, and Deshaun has said himself, he wanted his life back, and his path to redemption to him was winning with the Browns and potentially leading them to a Super Bowl. He saw that as his way out. And beyond the injury, I think all of that hit him in that moment. I think he knows what this means for him, not just now. I think he knew exactly what the injury was the second it happened. I think he knew exactly what this meant in terms of his career, that he's never going to play on a professional football field again, at least in a regular season capacity. It's just over. So what this means, he's going to be out for the rest of the season. He's going to have season-ending surgery, obviously. The Browns are going to move on. We saw DTR today. We saw Jameis Winston a little bit today when DTR hurt his finger. And what you're going to have happen is the Browns are going to go in the offseason, and they're going to have to operate as if Deshaun's not going to be there, because he's not effectively. He's going to work to rehab from the injury and all those things, but there's no incentive for him to rush back. There's no incentive for the team to rush him back, because either way, at that point, he just becomes basically quarterback 3 at best. And that doesn't help him at all. It doesn't help the team. They're going to go out and do what they're going to do. Now, my theory of the case is going to be veteran, whether it's Jameis or somebody else, DTR, and probably a rookie. And I don't assume that rookie's going to be the top pick of the draft, but it could be. And I think the Browns are going to sort of operate that way. Deshaun's going to come back, likely end up on the PUP list at some point, unable to go into the season, which solves the Browns roster issue. There are some sort of insurance considerations that are really difficult to sort of project, because we just don't have the information. No one really does. But the Browns are going to get some cap relief depending on how long. They're going to get some cap relief by virtue of the insurance policy kicking in now that he's going to miss the next 10 games. Any games he would miss next year, which they're going to make sure happens some way, somehow, they're going to get some cap relief. None of this impacts Watson. He's still going to get paid. So it's not like it's going to hurt him to not rush back. But the Browns are going to sort of work around his cap hits in whatever they are going to be left. And then eventually he's not going to. He can request a trade all he wants. Nobody's going to trade for him. He can say he wants to be cut. He's not going to do that because he's got so much guaranteed money that it would hurt him. So eventually, he's just going to be sort of released unceremoniously, and no one's going to sign him, and that will be it. And that's a grisly, unpleasant reminder of how the NFL works and how professional sports, but especially the NFL works. They're moving on. Deshaun Watson is effectively out of memory in a few weeks, and the NFL will continue to roll forward and make all the money and all that stuff, which is where you sort of end up in this situation with the injury and it taking place on the field the way it did, and how fans reacted, and why we are now watching this play out almost live of players and fans sort of having this massive divide in terms of how this was handled in the moment. That some segment of fans, enough of them, cheered the injury, and that some number of players were visibly pissed at fans for doing this. And now we've heard any number of players come out and talk about this situation, Myles Garrett most notably. And I'm not going to defend Myles Garrett saying the stuff about being pretty good most of the time or any of that crap. I wish he didn't say that. But the rest of the sentiment, I completely understand. It rings 100% true to how players would look at this situation. And it is not a good look for Cleveland or the fan base. A fan base that, wants to pride itself on being the blue collar, never say die, always support of the team thing. But like, whether it was Tim Couch being cheered when he went down with an injury and had done nothing to anyone, or Deshaun Watson, and many people are going to defend and say, well, Deshaun Watson was a bad guy. The reality, and I'm not going to dispute that, but the reality is if Deshaun Watson was playing all-pro level football, people would have cheered him. There would still be people who have reservations, but people would cheer him. And if he was hurt, they'd be devastated if he was playing at that level. Yeah. So it's convenient in some ways to say, well, he's a bad guy. No disagreement there, but I can't help but sympathize. And I thought Jameis Winston was the most, politically savvy way of illustrating this point by saying, hey, I know how passionate the fans are, this, that, and the other, trying to say, all these nice things about the fans of Cleveland, and then just saying like this crossed the line. And I don't disagree with that sentiment that a line was crossed, and understand why players would be upset, because you say to these players in this team sport, hey, play for the guy next to you, be a team, do all the things, we want it to be a movie and all this other crap, come together in training camp, whatever, win football games, be a team. And then they do the exact thing you tell them to do, to be a team. And when they act like a team, you're then mad at them because they didn't decide to have some sort of morality play here where they decide, well, they should probably just, walk away from Deshaun Watson while he's injured in the field. And they, all they see in that moment is a guy wearing the same colors as them in their own stadium, getting booed or cheered, in this case, the injury, by the fans that are supposed to be there for them. And it's easy to say, well, if it was me on the field, they wouldn't be cheering like that. But they don't know that. And we look at this, and the NFL in particular, very fleeting. Careers are very short. 3 years if you're lucky. And it sends an ugly message about the reality of this game that's more of a gladiatorial event rather than sports and all these things we want it, all this well-meaning thing, the stuff we want it to be, that we aspire to be, have sports to be. And just because they're bad and they're playing poorly, which no one wants to do, we make it into a situation where now players can sit there and hopefully it blows over, but they can say to themselves, what am I going to stay here for? What, if they pay me, great. But if not, I'm just going to get as much money as I can, as long as I can, and just make the best of it I can, because this is the grim reality of the sport. And, I hate looking at it like that, but that's sort of the inevitable conclusion you can draw. So now we're in the situation.
I think it goes that far, though. Like, do you think, like, listen, like, it's incredibly unfortunate, and it was a poor response, but it was predictable. a predictable response at this point. As some faction of the crowd was going to behave that way today. We talked at length about how ugly this scene could get today, and with that injury, it did get ugly, right? That was obviously a terrible look, but um, we knew that was going to happen. I mean, if you had told me he went down for an injury, I probably could have guessed that that was going to happen from some faction of the crowd, right?
Sure.
A-
I agree with you.
and but do you think it goes as far as players saying they don't want to play in Cleveland anymore
I'm
because
not
of
saying
that?
it will. I'm just saying it could. That some players may look at this and just say simply, "Look, this is a business," and that's the only way I'm going to treat it that way. Because that's the problem you run into is that fans don't want this to be a business. Fans want this to be, buying into the city, buying into the community, buying
Yeah,
into each other, all that stuff.
yeah,
And then when you have this happen, and it becomes a very quickly back to being a business, and you reinforce that message that it's a business. So I don't know if it's going to go that far. Ultimately, none of us will know. And as I said, this could blow over, and maybe in a couple of weeks, no one will think about this. But like in that moment, I think players look at this and go, "Man, I could be out of the league tomorrow,"
yeah,
and takes all that sort of romantic notion of sport out of it, um, which is so frustrating because in the same day, here's the thing: in the same weekend this is happening, you have the Guardians go to the ALCS and obviously lose, but to a team that has 3 times their payroll. And in the same game, we have this what should be the story of the game in many ways. Should be Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb comes back. Nick Chubb gets to play. Nick Chubb scores a touchdown, and we're not because of this other thing. So I mean, like we want the sport to be we want sports to be the storybook ending and all this stuff, and this sort of gets in the way of that. So I hope it does not continue, but like I would also say I don't think it's helpful at all to fan the flames of this thing by any stretch. I don't think it's helpful when
no,
and some of these things are inevitable. People going into their social media and yelling at them, telling how awful they are, and this wouldn't happen if this, that, and the other. That stuff's awful, and I don't like I don't like it being a thing, but it is inevitable. But it leads you to a place of possibly going, alienating a group of players that didn't trade for Deshaun Watson. Only the team traded for him.
yes,
We're stuck with him, and that doesn't mean that what Miles said in terms of his behavior is any less weird or awkward. I wish he didn't say it. I think if he had a do-over, he'd rephrase that differently. But this is the situation they were put in. They were told Deshaun Watson's going to be your quarterback, be a team, do all this other stuff, and they did it. And now we're mad at them for doing exactly the thing we told them to do.
yeah, you're right, and I think it is worth pointing out that um, it's not everybody, right? Like it's not all of Cleveland. There's some people that booed him, and of course it's incredibly unfortunate. But like, not everybody there was booing him,
Right.
and some people do have enough class to realize the situation. But it was a classless move, and it does put the city in a bad light. This situation is super complicated with Deshaun Watson, right? It's just a complicated situation, but a a, a better reaction there would have served their reputation better. I do agree with that.
Well, it's just that, like, in this situation, like right now, everybody is ready to be sympathetic to Cleveland fans because they did not trade for Cleveland fans did not trade for Deshaun Watson. This was put upon them, and they've sort of been forced to endure it. So there's this element of, in many ways, the fans are the victims of this, and I wholeheartedly believe that. But I wish we didn't always find a way to somehow give people a reason to remove that element, to suddenly go, well, maybe they deserve it after all. And I'm saying that is not true. What I'm saying is I wish people did not give sort of people outside of Cleveland a reason to go, well, this is what they deserve anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. That makes a lot of sense. Because it's already a mess, right? It just makes it more of a mess and more of a reason for people to point and swing down and things like that. So, um, Miles' comments, which Kevin's comments after the game. Well, let's talk about this first. Did you agree with? I don't know why the change came this week. I know that during the game they talked about how Dorsey came to DTR on Friday and told him to start getting ready as the backup. This I was not in favor of this move. They made it sound like they might have done it for a run package or something like that. So maybe they got forced into this, not expecting the injury, obviously, and forced to play DTR, and they actually wanted to play Jameis. I guess we'll find out. What do you think their ultimate? Do you think they wanted DTR to be the guy to take over for Watson moving forward?
Yes.
You do.
Ultimately, and Kevin Stefanski sort of gave away the game a little bit in the press conference by saying nobody other than Watson was really taking reps with the first team. So it was sort of irrelevant. But clearly, there's an incentive for them to look at DTR. And what I saw from DTR right at the get-go, I was all for it. Like,
Yeah.
It was, if you were somebody who was saying that Deshaun Watson is the source of the offensive problems, DTR immediately coming into the game gave you all the evidence you could ever ask for. Now, I mean, in terms of he threw the ball right off the rip. He threw a beautiful fade stop, comeback pass to Cedric Tillman. It was called pass interference. I was hoping Tillman was going to make that catch because it was right on him, but just great ball.
Yeah.
DB had no choice. They immediately go in and score, and they get that remarkably bad offsides call.
Phantom
Which
call.
even the broadcast was like, I don't know how you call this.
Yeah.
Because it went right. They go right in the end zone. Instead, we're forced to go through this thing of going through fourth down to get the end zone into the end zone. But here's the thing you notice immediately: the ball gets out of DTR's hands. He's not messing around. And the other thing that you noticed, like Deshaun Watson, his mobility is supposed to be a weapon. DTR looks infinitely more athletic than Watson does. Obviously, he's much thinner, but like Watson just does not move like DTR was. And you saw easy runs that he was able to produce a ton of yardage. And he just provides a spark in the way that I saw a lot of what I saw in the preseason. Suddenly there's a whole bunch of guys on the offense I've never heard of before because DTR will find you if you're open. Now, that doesn't change the fact that there were a number of penalties, some of which were on DTR, like the one illegal man downfield was on the RPO was on DTR for not getting rid of the ball soon enough. But he looks way more natural running RPOs in general because he's done it forever at UCLA and then now in the NFL. The ball goes down the field more. He's able to find more receivers. It frankly exposed that there are a lot of issues going on offense that we knew were going on, but like really hammered home that, yes, Deshaun Watson was playing historically bad, but there's a lot of things that just need to be corrected. Still saw drops, still saw penalties, still saw those other things. So I was happy to see with DTR play. I think once he started getting behind the sticks with the penalties and the other thing, we saw sort of Ravens DTR show up at the end. But I sort of attribute that to not having those reps. And I think getting more time and reps would be great for him. But it wouldn't hurt my feelings if they went with Jameis either. And frankly, right now, based on the finger injury, we don't know the severity or anything. I think they will go with Jameis Winston against the Ravens, just my guess. But both quarterbacks, I see an offense. I see what Dorsey wants to do. I see opportunities to make plays down the field. I see Cedric Tillman looks like an NFL player all of a sudden. I see David Njoku getting the ball. I see all these other things happening that were not happening with Watson and a quarterback, and I'm here for all of it. So if you're asking me what's the ultimate better situation for the Browns right now going forward, it's DTR, because DTR, one, is under contract for the future. Jameis is not. And DTR is a second-year quarterback where he's got all kinds of room to grow, whether or not he could be a starter. But but he's just a worthwhile skill set to work with and see if things can get better. But yeah, I was thrilled with what I saw earlier. He went right down the field, almost went down the field twice, and would have put the Browns up if the kicker could make field goals and extra points.
Yeah. So I guess like I ultimately, and I wrote about this, that at some point DT. I mean, there's a lot of games left, right? You're going to be able to get DTR experience. I guess I kind of just was thinking like, and I thought he was good as well, and it was clear that the offense was being held back, or he was good at the beginning, and then he kind of got off kilter at some point in this game. Maybe rushing things a little bit, but that comes with reps and getting comfortable, obviously. But I just kind of wanted to see Jameis in this offense to get maybe a better evaluation of everything going on around. We got a better evaluation of some of the wide receivers today. The wide receiver, the catches were and targets were sprayed all over the field for the first time in weeks, right? So, which was a good sign. I guess I wanted them to try to win this game, right? And I feel like Winston would have given them the best chance to win this game. At some point, you're beyond the point of no return, and you just play DTR because it's the best case for getting him ready for the future. But yeah, I didn't really understand that switch to him at this point. When you still have, at least before the bye week, get a chance to play, get a win against Cincinnati and then maybe Baltimore and try to work your way to around 500 at some point. Obviously, we know that's not going to happen at this point, but DTR feels like going straight to DTR feels like a little bit like, obviously you want to get him game experience, and I do think DTR can be a good quarterback, but it feels a little bit like tanking.
Not to me. Kevin Stefanski said straight up to Daniel Oyefase that the Browns viewed them both as the number 2 quarterback. And this is something I talked about in the preseason and in training camp, where people were talking about, was DTR going to beat out Tyler Huntley? And I had maintained all along, he's not looking at Tyler Huntley. He's looking at Jameis Winston. And I'm not convinced and the Browns may have made this decision based on the fact that they think DTR has surpassed what Winston can offer them. We don't know the answer to that. And certainly when Jameis came in, he did fine. But honestly, they look the same to me, for better or worse. Now, if we get, I would like to see both of them with reps, obviously, at this point. And again, this is something I harped on when we've talked about benching the quarterback. I want whoever it is to get that full week's worth of reps, which is why I think Jameis is going to get the start this week. If in DTR's finger may be fine, but ultimately I think it just comes down to, you want to go in with confidence, the health of the guy, and just be able to go and operate. But at no point did I feel like DTR was the give up option. I felt like the Browns made that promotion based on the idea that they thought DTR was just as equipped to win that game as Winston was. And based again on the early part of his play, I had a hard time disagreeing with him. I had no idea what to expect, honestly, given the circumstances, everything. But when he came in, the lift was immediate. He was great for just getting them going. Now, ultimately, we'll see. I mean, Winston's experience may prove out and be more valuable overall, and you may prove to be right. But I don't think the Browns at any point were thinking DTR means tank or means we're just playing out the string. I think they looked at DTR as an option that could win them the football game. That's
fair. I mean, his ultimately, what happened on the interception? Do you have so that he threw that ball? Do you think that was intended for Akins?
Yes, it's clearly Akins. They ran a drag snatch combination.
Yeah,
they run a lot of mesh stuff, and people are getting very upset with this, but they run a lot of mesh stuff. And Cedric Tillman was running a drag underneath and was looking at DTR, and DTR's throwing to Akins, who's literally sitting there waiting. And Tillman turns around and reaches all the way back, and the ball goes straight in the air, clearly to Akins. We can complain about the spacing and whatever. Again, I think this is reps. and some of these other things, and a mistake by a young player who did, for whatever reason, didn't seem to understand who else understood his job, didn't seem to understand what everybody else's job was on that play. But the ball was clearly to Akins, and it was where it was supposed to be. And I think it was interesting that how fast the ball was coming out, that guys were like were surprised in his being decisive. That interception was incredibly unfortunate. But I don't put that at all on DTR. I put that entirely on Tillman being unaware or whatever. I mean, unfortunately, it's a troubling trend with him. But I think he had a really strong performance overall. That play does certainly hurt, but overall, I thought he did a really nice job. And for people who have tried to write him off, I think this is why you sit there and go, okay, this is something they can work with. His size is obviously a huge asset. He was able to get open, made the 2-point conversion catch. Like, there are clearly things to work with here. And, as you've been harping on for a while and are sort of validated, this is why they needed to get Watson out of the game, because this was all sitting there waiting for them if they just had somebody else to throw the ball in many ways. So hopefully that part of this is a boost to positive. I mean, that's the thing. There were a lot of things. The Watson thing, injury and the reaction, all that stuff was an absolute nightmare, and losing the game sucked, and the special teams had all kinds of problems. Offensively and defensively, overall, I was really sort of feeling better, more optimistic about the direction of the team overall, because I just think that there is more to be had there, as opposed to waiting for the offense to go out there and suck for all the predictable reasons. And the penalties are obviously still need to be cleaned up, and there are a number of other things that need to be addressed. But I see a path to get better and win some football games, as opposed to just waiting for waiting for them to find the banana peel and just sort of die out.
Yeah. Here is the post Cooper receivers performance today. Obviously, Tillman was a large day, and mostly with DTR. Remember that connection goes back to high school, I believe, right? So
yeah, they both played at Bishop Gorman.
Yes, at Bishop Gorman, 8 catches for 81 yards. Njoku, 10 catches, 76. Akins, 4 for 42. Moore shows up finally, 6 for 41. And Judy, 1 for 18, and a thrown helmet ricocheting off the bench.
Not a good look for Judy today. And he's got to grow up, because, you can throw a hissy fit and then you drop the ball that's right there. Like, I don't care. Like, get over it and play the game. And hopefully, again, all these things will hopefully improve, and there'll be more opportunities. But there are too many instances where guys are, guys who are supposed to be part of the future of this team aren't able to get past stuff. Judy, notably, and then Elijah Moore, who is essentially auditioning for either the Browns or other teams, getting sat down for a couple series over whatever he did.
That was weird.
Is not going to help them. So
no,
they've got to, the Browns have to grow up in some ways.
Yeah, and so I want to pivot to this here today, because Pete, this has to be one of the worst played special teams games I've ever seen by a unit in the NFL. I mean, it was atrocious. So they give up a return 110 yards, missed field goal, missed PAT. They give up. They try to return the kickoff to the 5-yard line after letting it bounce around in and out of the end zone. A 22-yard return on a punt. A 15-yard penalty where D'Anthony Bell spears a guy on the pile 5 minutes after the play's over. I mean, it was just awful on special teams, and it killed them.
The Anthony Bell penalty is how you end up out of the league. Like, that's how you teams just say, we're not dealing with this. Yeah. You don't cost that much. We can make an example out of you and move on to the next guy. And, I'm not saying I wish that on Anthony Bell. I'm just saying that's how it can happen. To your point on the kickoff, I understand that the Browns have forced multiple fumbles on kickoff. Obviously, one of them was called back for a penalty, and they've gotten the other one. to me, all the incentives are kicking the ball for a touchback right now. All of them.
Always.
Because the NFL went to the dynamic kickoff rule to get more returns. So all the benefits are to return kickoffs at this point. They are trying to make this play happen more often. They want kickoff return touchdowns. They want this excitement. They think it makes their game better. And until they change the rule, which I think they will, to make the touchback from the 30 to the 35, I think that's going to happen to make more of these plays happen. Kick the ball. To me, your best bet is to kick the ball in no way, shape, or form in a position where they can return it, force them to take the ball at the 30. And in a game like this one, this is the example. You look at it and you go, that is potentially the difference in the football game. Not only because the score differential, not only because of the Browns have yet to score 20 points. We're 7 games in, they've yet to score 20. You gave them 7 right off the bat. And obviously you don't intend for that to happen, but it happened. And it puts you at a significant deficit. Now, add on to the fact that you miss a field goal. That's 3 more points. So now you're at 10 differential. And then you missed an extra point, 11 differential. Dustin Hopkins has been bad this year. And this is not to make light of 50-plus yard field goals. They are not trivial. But it was 49 on a clear day. The extra point, again, he just pulling the ball to the left. The holds look fantastic. The whole thing looks great. He's just pulling the ball to the left. And, he was – if you want to sort of look at this and you go, what's the difference between 2023 and 2024? Well, Dustin Hopkins had the best kicking season the team has ever had in 2023, and now he looks very ordinary in 2024 and is now costing the team game or contributing to cost the team games this year. That is obviously a problem. They gave him a contract extension, which now I'm not going to say they regret, but it doesn't look very good right this moment. They need him to come through. And again, because points are at a premium, you're putting Kevin Stefanski in a weird situation because, like, normally if his offense is better, that 4th and 4, he's probably going for it.
Yeah.
But because they don't have confidence, and I'm not suggesting they should, they go, oh, we'll get the guy we can rely on to kick the 49-yard field goal. At least we'll be on the board 7-3. Our defense is good. We can get off the field. We get the ball back and get going, and you miss the field goal. That is really difficult and put your head coach in a really awkward situation. So that's where you sort of sit, and you sit there and you're wondering why is how there's always this one thing we need to fix. Well, there's a lot more than one thing, and you can sort of see why Kevin Stefanski looks beleaguered at his press conferences at this point because he's not catching a break anywhere. Nobody's coming through for him in a meaningful way other than the defense at points.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And what? So if you're talking about the kickoff, Ty Stock says, "Why not make it the 40?" Why? I suspect that the NFL will move it back, but until they do, kick it out of the back of the end zone. It's just you're just taking so much, chance out of the entire situation. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, the self-inflicted stuff is out of control. To your point, why you just talked about Stefanski at the presser looking beleaguered. And I mean, what do you do as a coach, Pete, at this point about a legal shift? I mean, it's over and over and over. How many times can you tell somebody that, 2 guys can't be moving at once, or you got to be set, or you can't be moving forward, and go over the basic, simple concepts and rules of illegal shifts? And, there's 10 penalties for 80 yards today. Multiple ones of them were illegal shifts, and they cost them big gains multiple times. It's super frustrating to watch, obviously, but I find it hard to even put on Stefanski anymore. I mean, he's had to have told them what to do at this point. Is this just mental errors? What is going on with this? How can they not get this fixed?
Unfortunately, I think 3 of them are on DTR. The one we talked about, the RPO, he didn't get the ball out quite fast enough, and the line's going down the field because that's their job. They don't have eyes in the back of their head. They're doing their job. The one illegal shift that was called on Jerry Jeudy, DTR, and some of this, might be a little bit on the play calling operation, which I think was heavily Dorsey today. My best guess. I know there was one play that was absolutely Dorsey where they were too slow and they had to call the timeout. But DTR has to wait for his guys to be set for a second to snap the ball. Jerry Jeudy's still moving, and he snaps the ball too early. Again, you have to know as a quarterback that your guys got to be set. And then the third penalty, which I guess is, I mean, it's on DTR, but it's like sort of a weird situation, was the intentional grounding call, which was also, he threw the ball and hit Jed Wills, and they called basically 2 penalties on him on that play.
Illegal touching and grounding. Because, first of all, Wills should not be reaching out to grab the ball because he knows that's illegal touching.
That's a reflex.
And he got smoked. I mean, he didn't even block it. What was he doing on that play? He didn't even block anybody. He didn't even reach out to try to block the guy. Ran right past him.
Yeah.
Jed Wills had a rough day, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, Jedrick Wills is not going to have a great day against Trey Hendrickson in the best circumstances. And obviously, the Browns made the choice that they did. They did not provide help. There's been typical of them in terms of how they want to pass protect. They want more receivers down the field as opposed to pass protection, and they often rely on the quarterback to sort of mitigate that situation. Frustrating, but a choice. You can disagree with that choice. There are times when I disagree with that choice, but nevertheless a choice. And even that, DTR and Jameis Winston validated that choice more often than Watson did, because, and although the one, Trey Hendrickson, where he sacked Watson, he just smoked Wills. I mean, that was just tremendous play by Hendrickson. It's just a great play. In the same way that it's very hard for me to get that mad at Greg Newsome for the touchdown he gave up against Jamar Chase, because that was just a great throw and catch. And you're just like, what do you want him to do? He was on his guy, whatever. So the Jedrick Wills piece, it's incredibly frustrating. His body language sucks and everything else. He just stops at points and he's maddening. That's an off-season thing, unfortunately. I mean, that's in that sense, you're saying what is the remedy for penalties there? Well, it's going to be, he's not going to be here next year. It's going to hurt him there. Not a satisfying answer, but ultimately how it's going to play out. But beyond that, like, we've seen other coaches do the things that people want them to sort of do, which is make them run laps and do all this other hokey crap that doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't want him to do that. I just want him to get it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, that's why you're so frustrated, because you are working with adults, adults with agency and ownership and the ability to do this thing. So, like, you can sit there and say, well, Kevin Stefanski's stupid. But then at the same time, we're sitting there going, well, why don't the Browns run more motion? Why don't the Browns do more things to sort of make it easier for the quarterback or try to put the defense at disadvantage? And then when they do, then we get these stupid penalties. Like, so either we go super simplistic, which is what they were doing at times with Deshaun Watson in previous games, which is frustrating, or we try to do the things we need to do to put ourselves in the best position to succeed and try to get through it. And obviously trying to get through it has its share of massive setbacks, and it's unfortunate. You just have to keep working, and there's no good way to just do it. You can't have your players go like soap beat the guy who's committing these penalties. You can't like do anything to these other than take away playing time or some kangaroo court, which is for a minimal amount of money. Like, they just have to sort of figure it out and get it. And you can be as mad at coaches as you want. There's only so much they can do before you're just like, the answer is either not try these things at all, which may be the option, or try to work through it. I do put some of this, again, I mentioned on the quarterback, but whether this was Jameis or DTR, and the fact that they haven't been working with the first team is going to naturally lead to some of these operational things. But again, this is something that's frustrated the team for a while. I think the play calling operation at times can get in its own way, and that needs to get cleaned up. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, you just have to somehow, any way you can, figure this thing out.
Speaking of figuring it out, we have a way for you to figure out your fitness at home here, the best way possible with Core Home Fitness. Look up your friends at Core Home Fitness. You can find them at corehomefitness.com. Check out their assortment of lifting equipment, especially their top-rated adjustable dumbbells by the New York Times and Men's Health. They're also rated at Best Buy by Consumer Reports. Check out their videos and other products like the Glute Drive Plus and the Fight Master, and crush your goals in 2024. They've got a U.S.-based support team, fast shipping, hassle-free returns, you name it. they know what they're doing. Again, check out corehomefitness.com for the ultimate in-home fitness equipment. They have stepped up to sponsor the OBR. They're known for these adjustable dumbbells right here. Get yourself in shape. The link is in the chat now. If you want to check it out, they rock. And go check out corehomefitness.com and improve yourself today. All right. Back to the game here. You're watching the OBR post-game show on the OBR streaming network with Pete Smith, and my name is Brad Ward. If you are in the chat or watching on X, hop on over to youtube.com/OrangeBrown and report. Give us a like and subscribe. It just takes a second. It's free, and it helps us out a great deal. Let's talk about the defense. Defense feel like they played better today. You made a point earlier of talking about, Newsom was saying he got pushed off on that play, or talking to the ref. He did not get pushed off on. I didn't think it was just a perfectly timed back shoulder. They gave up a couple big plays there, but I thought the defense played really well for the most part, Pete, most of the day.
Most important point, they played zone and executed it well. This is something the Browns have not done well under the last two defensive coordinators. They've not been a very effective zone team. They've not done well in terms of being able to communicate and get those things hammered out. And there probably were still some lapses in there, but ultimately they were way better. So the last 2 weeks, I have seen the defense do things it doesn't normally do and do them at a high level. That to me is good. And I obviously, in the backdrop of now what is a 1-6 football team, that's not going to sound very good. But it is important because I don't think this defense is going anywhere in terms of ultimately the guys in place are going to remain in place. So there are a lot of good things I look at in there, and guys stepping up and making plays. The pass rush early was terrible. The coverage stepped up there. And then later, the pass rush started winning and creating pressure, and they got some big-time plays up front. Shelby Harris sack on 4th down. The Isaiah McGuire, Maurice Hurst sack when they needed it. You're seeing guys get in there and cause problems. Now, again, we had a personal foul, roughing the passer call on Okoronkwo that wasn't great. And you still have your share of mistakes there, but like the game, they gave up 14 points. They did the thing. And here again, if they don't give up obviously the game changes if they don't give up the kickoff return touchdown. But if they kick that field goal and do these other things, so like suddenly it's a game that goes down to the wire potentially. Joe Burrow did not beat them in this game. Like Joe Burrow was fine. He had that one great throw to T. Higgins. They made a couple of the other great throws in the game, but like I don't think the Bengals offense comes out of this game and goes, "Oh man, we're back on track. We're ready to go." I think they're frustrated that they still are struggling. The Browns still feel like their defense has his number in many respects. And they didn't play their best and were still able to hold off. So, and give the offense every chance to get back in this game. Give the special teams every chance to get them back in this game. I also don't see the lack of effort that many people want to suggest is out there. They're trying their hardest to make plays and do the things that they need to win. So, there are plays you can pick at and go, man, that was a bad play. They let another jet sweep go by. Martin Emerson at points was still having some issues, but I think overall he was still better. Grant Delpit is so valuable for this team. My God, he's really important. Him and JOK do so much. The other guy, and I don't know what his PFF grade or anything could be, but the guy I think is coming on really strong now he's back from the injuries, Diabate. Like Diabate seems to have like two or three like impact plays in a game now. You're seeing some things from the rookie Mike Hall come back and cause some issues. It's not really he's not got his first sack or anything, but he's getting pressure. He's still doing some of the things we saw him doing preseason. The more experience he gets, the better. Again, I like that we're seeing obviously the injury to Alex Wright has a big thing to do with it, but we're seeing more from Isaiah McGuire. Zadarius Smith is able to make a couple key plays. We'll see how long he's here. If he's here for much longer, if a team like Detroit comes and calls for him or something like that. But they got a lot of contributions from a lot of different players in this game. They obviously had some mistakes. The Cam Mitchell missed tackle was bad. Obviously gave up a touchdown result. Like, that's way worse than anything Greg Newsome did in this game.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And Denzel Ward was fantastic. Had a number of big pass breakups in this one. And we saw the Denzel Ward that we've sort of become accustomed to when he's healthy and playing well, as opposed to the last couple of games where he's been like in and out of the lineup so much. So the secondary being healthy was massive for this team. Grant Delpit, I already mentioned. Juan Thornhill being back provides them a boost. Hopefully Ronnie Hickman will be back in the not too distant future. I just think it looked much better. And again, it doesn't make anyone feel better because they're 1-6, but I am happy to see the Browns are finding ways to do more things to provide different looks and cause problems, because throughout the broadcast, you heard them talking about, it looks like the Bengals were expecting man and they are not having a good time trying to figure out this zone. That stuff to me is important because the Browns played so much man last year. They have been such a blitz heavy team. I saw in the Thursday night game that they were like the third highest blitz rate. And when when it's working, great, but it hasn't been working this year as much. So they needed to bring into these other aspects of the defense. It's working. They're stabilizing themselves. They're keeping more in front of them. They're forcing teams to drive, and those teams are failing to do it. Like, I've criticized Zach Taylor a lot. I thought he was dead on when he was aggressive going for it on fourth down in this game, and the Browns were just up to the task. So they deserve all the credit for it. But like, this is stuff. If you're a Bengals fan who probably doesn't love Zach Taylor this year, I actually thought that was good stuff, and the Browns were just better in those moments.
Yeah, you make a great point about them, playing more zone and doing it better or well. Even you could even go that far at times, because we talked about in the pregame show, they've that high blitz rate that you mentioned, and how much they've had to do that to create pressure at times, and how good Burrow is against the blitz. He's got like 5 touchdowns. He's like third in the NFL. So the pivot to more zone, less blitzing, obviously worked and was something that I did not expect from Schwartz, who's sometimes kind of stuck in his way. So kudos to him for at least coming with a different game plan there, right?
Back weeks of different, not just changeups, but completely different changeups from each other. I take it as a positive. Doesn't change the fact that they lost, but it also suggests to me that this team isn't, as it's currently structured, isn't going anywhere. But we'll see.
All right, as we wind things down here, Pete, on what is a crazy day, Bengals 21, Browns 14. Talked about special teams, Stefanski. What's the path forward here? So we talked about at the top. Well, actually, one other topic I want to hit. What did you think? How did Nick Chubb look to you?
He's not himself yet, but it got better as he went. The offensive line was abysmal. I mean, there's no getting around that. They were awful. And again, we talked about Deshaun Watson, all the problems he has had. The offensive line was dreadful consistently in this one. But biggest thing was Nick Chubb played, walked off the field.
No setbacks. Got
to do that, got the touchdown. All that stuff was great. He looked a little bit like Nick Chubb when he scored the touchdown, but I suspect he will get a little bit more fluid and more comfortable in these next few games. Maybe coming out of the bye week, he will sort of be a little bit more like himself. But without, we don't know what he's capable of. We don't know what percentage of himself he can get back. I don't think he was near 100. I don't think he would say he was near 100. And some of that may have been a little bit about nerves and just getting back into it and get used to it. But ultimately, the takeaway is I'm just thrilled that Nick Chubb was able to play, get back in the game, make a couple nice plays, had a nice reception, had the touchdown, and a couple of I should say he had about 3 touchdowns. One of them counted. And then, can they get better from this? Maybe. We'll see. It's certainly a little bit more juice, but it just illustrates just where the offensive line is right now, which is unfortunately not in a good place. And hopefully it gets a little bit better. But this is a thing that's going to be addressed in the offseason, clearly, between left tackle, whether that's on the roster and DeJuan Jones, maybe, I don't know. They're going to have to deal with center in some form or fashion. They're going to have to get another guard. It's not an overhaul by any stretch, but they have to reinvest. And I know there are people who are going to continue to blame the offensive line coach. I've lost track on the number of offensive line combinations they played with this year. I've lost track. It's way more than last year already. They're on their fourth. They've played 4 centers. And that was a position that nobody expected to be this problematic in terms of injuries. Bill Callahan's line was bad last year. Bill Callahan's line this year with Tennessee is bad. Coaching makes a big difference. It is not a magic wand. It does not perform alchemy. And I look at a guy like Andy Dickerson, who was behind the 8 ball from the word go. He couldn't work with 3 of his guys for most of the offseason. He lost his replacements almost immediately in terms of like Akeem Adeniji and some of those guys. So it's not a good situation. Does that mean he's a great coach? I have no idea. That's the problem. I have no idea what he is as a coach. I just see a team that is trying to tread water right now. And this is the first game where they have gotten through without a major offensive line injury. And even Jack Conklin left at the end is allegedly fine, but came out and DeJuan Jones went at the end. So it's just a brutal situation across the board, and it's really difficult to win that way.
Yeah, needs a lot of attention this offseason for sure. Now, the path forward for the Browns at this point is by the way of not someone named Deshaun Watson at quarterback for the rest of the year. Hopefully you see Nick Chubb start to maybe get that burst back a little bit. But either way, what we saw from DTR was at least a glimpse of, hey, there are some things out there. This can be more fun to watch. The ball can get out faster, the things we've been talking about, right? So, despite who it is, whether you believe it should be DTR or you believe it should be Jameis Winston, they're going to move forward with one of these guys. Eventually, I do believe it should be DTR just for the fact, because I know he needs the reps, and the Browns need as many swings at somebody that can start for them moving forward as possible. He provides you one of them. So you got to get in play time. But what's it look like moving forward as they've got Baltimore next week at home. And you're going to, depending on his injury, it sounds like it'll probably be DTR unless his finger is too injured. So, what does this look like moving forward? And does the offense need to change, be tweaked, anything like that going into the rest of the season?
Yeah. Won't know until they decide. Kevin Stefanski looked legitimately unsure of who was played quarterback based on, because he didn't have enough information. I suspect it will be Jameis. It could be DTR. I don't see a reason to change the offense at all. I actually thought this was the most reason to believe there was an offense this week.
Yeah.
If anything, it looked like Deshaun Watson didn't fit the offense that he helped design based on the limited return we saw from these two guys. But I like what they can do. And look, if all else fails, if the Browns are just going to be a disaster this year, which they're well on their way to being, just give me Josh McCown. Throw for 250, 270, 3 touchdowns and 2 picks and lose, if that's what it means. Because at least that means your receivers are getting opportunities to be evaluated, and that DTR can potentially develop and show you what he can do. But at least guys can, sink or swim at receiver. They get opportunities so they can make plays, and who knows, maybe you get lucky and you might get on a run because your defense is pretty good. I suspect the more time they get with the ones, the easier that will be. The fact that they haven't is going to lead to some clunkiness, but hopefully that will get ironed out. But as I said, if not for the Watson injury just being what it is, and that whole overarching story, I feel better about the Browns now than I did before the game, just in terms of the amount of possibilities I see with what they can accomplish. Wyatt Teller may be back.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a while still for him, but that's something out on the horizon. Jamari Thrash was at least active today. Hopefully they can start getting him going. But, I still think the Browns are going to do everything they can to win, as they should, because I don't see a reason for them not to, because they can still accomplish their goals of evaluating these guys and trying to win and just continuing to build on the offense being what it is. I think there's real value in that. Again, as I sit here now, and I keep saying this, I don't think the Browns are getting rid of anybody in terms of coach, GM, et cetera. I think they're going to work their way through it and try to make the best of this and then move on as best they can. The financial situation with Watson, they can work around. It's not great, but they can work around it. They can get another quarter. They can bring in 3 new quarterbacks if they want to, but I think they're going to end up with veteran, DTR, and probably a rookie of some sort, and just try to figure it out. If they can fix the offensive line, which I think becomes the bigger priority. I mean, in as far as quarterback can't be, basically, if they don't evaluate somebody being that franchise guy, fix the offensive line, get a journeyman type that you hope can be your Sam Darnold / whatever bridge guy that will at least allow you to be competitive. Continue to make the defense strong. Basically, emulate what the Steelers did this past offseason in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Really hammer the offensive line, finish up, really strengthen the defense, and then put yourself in a position to compete, and then go get whoever you want in the next draft or whatever draft it ends up being, but you can play good football under those circumstances.
Last question for you. And Chris brought this up. Any want to take a shot at who the Browns will bring in as their new emergency quarterback?
I have no idea. That's a good question. I mean, I don't imagine they're going to bring in the guy they kept bringing in the training camp, whose name escapes me right now. But it's without knowing who's available. I mean, they could theoretically grab up somebody on a practice squad somewhere and say, hey, we're going to keep him on the roster 3 games anyway, and say, hey, we might as well get a look at him. We can evaluate him. Maybe they like him as a potential something down the road. But right off the rip, it's really difficult to say. There's nobody out there that sort of jumps out at you and goes, they should sign that guy.
I always think it's going to be somebody they've already had here. So that tends to be the trend. All right, we're going to get out of here. Any parting words on everything going on here today, Pete? A lot of stuff, a lot to take in with the Browns today. As you wrote, probably, leaning towards more definitely maybe the end of the Deshaun Watson era with the Cleveland Browns, and more details financially and contract-wise in the coming days, I'm sure, from Jack Duffin at the OBR and all of us combined as we continue to write on this and talk about it and talk about what's going to happen next for the Browns and what becomes priority. But anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Yeah, the circumstances for why Deshaun Watson is no longer the quarterback is unfortunate and disappointing. It is, however, the dose of reality this team needs. They've got the clean break, in as uncomfortable as a way to say it is, to say that it is allows them to now move forward unencumbered.
Yeah.
There's no, what do they do with the quarterback now? The answer is there. So now it's just full steam ahead with the remaining quarterbacks on your roster and try to find the best way to win, try to advance this offense, get better, and play better football. I think all of those things are achievable. Is that going to save the season? Probably not. It's really difficult when you're 1-6, but they can certainly play better football going forward than they have to this point. And that is something that's at least worth watching. I saw improvement offensively from receivers and stuff, even though there's still clunkiness. I keep seeing, again, I talked about the defense. The last 2 weeks, I've seen them do things they don't normally do and did them well, which gives me reason to believe they can continue to play better.
Totally agree. So we move on as only we can do. Keep it locked at the OBR 24/7. Sign up for the newsletter so you can get that stuff directly in your inbox. And thanks to Ian McBride behind the virtual glass tonight. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. This has been the post-game show. Browns lose 21-14. Keep it locked, and we will see you all week long. We are out.